Major General John Alcock successfully lured the army of the Okayama clan into an impossible assault and cleanly destroyed them on an isolated hillside. One step closer to Kyoto, the capital according to some. But all this new territory wouldn't come in very useful if it couldn't be connected to the empire by sea, and this connection was tenuous at best. The Japanese fleets were numerous, and the British couldn't get them all. Thus, the sea would have to be secured by simply capturing major ports over land. George Hook proved that this was easier than previously assumed. Now, the last dregs of the Okayama were making an attack behind the front line, but by all accounts, they were projected to fail. What's come through recently? There's been a fair few convoys in, isn't that right? Yes, sir. No letters have arrived, though. I heard there was trouble in Nagasaki, though, so, Oh, it's not Naga something that's the trouble. It's India. I think they've got some conniving hands who didn't want any communication between myself and the crown. I bet there's some reclining holiday maker wearing a fresh set of general stripes at my expense. We had a note from that half-Jap, the Broadhurst. He said his commission had all gone through. Yes, but the Bounders wouldn't care about that. They'll think some native is getting a brigade all to himself and think I've gone soft or mad. No need for them to interfere there. Anything they can do to oust me so the old boys on the company legacy can slide in to pull the rug out as they pull rank. We can't let the work we've done here go to waste. Of course, sir. Any orders? Yes. Let's take a letter for that old Jap emperor. Hello and welcome to More Honourable, gentlemen. We defeated the attack by the Okayama, losing a couple of garrison units, but they respawn, so that's no loss at all effectively. Next, there's a new threat in the area, though. The Owaji are moving through with an army and a bit. It seemed, though, to be moving to the north. I wondered if they were at war with the Okayama, but no, they are allied to them, so I think they're just moving in to support their ally. That's very nice of them. First, I moved out with John Alcock to destroy their little trailing units and damaged units separate from the main army. I used a night attack to get rid of them without fighting the main army. As for everything else, I realised we don't actually need to fight them. We can just walk past them and continue as if they weren't here with our original objective, just fighting the Okayama. So we move up with Alcock and take another settlement off them, and because of these short reinforcement ranges in that mod, everything else nearby just isn't involved. So there we go. Now my reserve stack was left behind, so whichever way the Owaji army goes, it's going to find a castle full of our troops. Hopefully that will be alright. Not so far to the north, we need to move out with Dorian and Charles, who are going after the Tottori. I attacked this army, but it ran away. That meant the castle next to it was now easy to take. I didn't bother auto-resolving that right away for some reason, because I had this other idea that I thought was more important. I'm going to get some cavalry from our reserve and send it to attack this other Okayama settlement down to the south, in between our two frontline positions at the moment. I ended up sending a few more cavs, so that would be a nice easy auto-resolve. The importance of doing that right now was that it now means the Okayama have only one settlement left, and it's one that's not really in the direction I want to go, so I wasn't interested in it. That means it's perfect for a vassalship candidacy, and indeed they do want to be my vassal, so this is all going to work out. Negotiated a bit so that they gave me some money at the same time, not that we particularly need it, just for fun. And there we go, they are vassalized. That means we can now focus entirely to the east on both of our battlefronts. Charles and Dorian don't have to look south, and John doesn't have to look north. Well, as long as they stay loyal to us, at least. The Owaji are still here, but now they're even more outnumbered locally, and I even remembered to go back and actually finish that castle assault with Dorian, so there we go. Now our front line can only be accessed over land by 2 river crossings to our east, so it's very easy to defend this particular position. Although that said, we don't necessarily want to defend, there's still plenty more territory to take. Now over in Kyushu, I'm going to make this attack against the Nabeshima. I've had them under siege with Josartin for a while, and it's going to be a while before they actually sally or run out of supplies, so I thought let's just attack them now while our navy is going past, since the navy will be able to provide a bit of supporting fire. We do also have the stolen parrot guns, which I'd like to test out. They're going to be handy for a castle assault, at least in theory. Here we are then with the attack. We start off by throwing some naval flares into the castle, so our big guns in the distance will start firing at the castle walls. Then we'll do the same thing with our smaller guns nearby. These parrot guns proved to be a little bit disappointing, I must say. They didn't do that much damage to the walls, so they had to hit them a lot of times to make the weird physics explosion that kills the nearby troops, which is of course what I'm looking for. And they don't have that much ammo, so they're not going to have a huge effect as the battle goes on, as it turns out. The naval attack isn't that effective either, just because the fleet is in bad condition. It doesn't have that many working guns. Get a few kills there, but nothing substantial. I'm sending in the Royal Marines to snipe enemies off the wall. Since they outrange them by a comfortable margin, we can do that safely. And every enemy we kill is one fewer to be firing at us when we attack with our main force. So now, just need to see how much damage we can do before we're out of our long-range ammunition, and then we'll have to just go for it. Come on, blow up more than that! I don't know, must be all these Japanese ship designs we've been using. Need to get some proper workers in from bloody Bristol to sort us out. No point crying. Get all the men up, 10-star jumps and all that. We're going to be doing this the hard way. If we wait around another 10 minutes, that madman Hook will have conquered the rest of the island and plastered paintings of himself on every telegraph post. Pretty sure he wants this war to be his big break, but the little scamp's fine letting me do 3/4 of the work. I like landlubbing, you know. Might be better at this than the tub scrubbing. Can probably pick up a permanent job with Emperor Elcock and weasel my way back to Britannia one day. I'll take that miserable pile of cash over another gig at the old Sparta warehouse for sure. To make our main attack, I first just moved up all the line infantry to stand near the wall and provide some additional firepower. I was also testing how many ranks deep they could actually fire. It appears to be up to about 5, although nothing particularly consistent there, so that's nice to know. Anyway, so we just walked around the outside of the castle for a bit, shooting at very close range some of the defenders, and even though they're in cover, we'll have so many guns firing on them that we should be able to make an advantageous fight out of that, although you can see I was pulling back units that were too heavily damaged by the enemy's return fire. Eventually we bust into the first layer of the castle. The enemy general was standing here with his Hatamoto guard, so we can't really form up. We're immediately drawn into this melee, and I thought let's just commit to it. We'll do this the simple way. Tell everyone to go into melee mode and just attack the cav, since even though our men aren't especially good in melee, since they're all elite and they all have high rank, they'll have very high melee stats anyway and should be able to deal with this. The enemy sent in an extra unit, some swordsmen, so a dedicated melee unit now. We're probably not going to have the best trade in that little blob, but with sheer numbers, sheer attrition, we'll hack our way through and start our attack on the next level of the castle. This time we're going to do it the more intelligent way. First, I send some cav through a gate to start a melee with their swords, then I do a fake retreat, and the swords are drawn out, trying to see where I went, but they find a whole load of guns pointing at them. They just go for it, they run down the ramp, and we shoot them to pieces with most of our army. So that went a little bit better. That's the way you're meant to fight melee units in a situation like this, if you're feeling like doing some actual micro. With that done, we can make it to the next level. There were a few infantry units up here who wanted to fight with us. Obviously that's not going to work. Things like levies have no chance. They just rout when we start fighting them, and they're routing towards us, so they are going to die. Now the last thing of particular interest that happened was this. The enemy sallied out with some mounted monk gunners. They ran right in front of my men, and I thought, well, good for them, that's not going to last very long, and just ignored it. I'm just forming up my men ready to advance here. But funnily enough, those monks aren't dying. They're just standing there still shooting me. And I was like, what is going on here? And it turned out all of my men were shooting at this tiny group inside the gateway and were just missing because they didn't have line of sight. Eventually, I ordered them to fire at these monks, and now they are going to get killed with the speed that I originally expected. That's that situation dealt with. After that, I sent in the dragoons to take the inner part of the castle, although the enemy units inside decided to run out and thus not have their fight to the death infinite morale. Then they just routed once they were outside of that inner part, and we were also shooting them to pieces. And that was the end of that. We made a nice, messy, but ultimately successful castle attack. There's the result. A few units did take a beating, probably as a result of fighting at point-blank range and taking a lot of enemy bullets towards the start of our assault, but the Nabeshima are now dead and will have plenty of time to replenish and repair that army. Now the Sacho have a battle for us. They go after Hook in this recently captured castle. We've got some naval support fire to help us from that same fleet that was just helping Joss since it's come over to use the ports. The enemy are mostly line infantry, so are we. We're not in ideal condition, but our men are better than theirs, so hopefully that will make up for it. For this battle, I'm going to be clustering everyone around the centre of our castle because it's very small. I'm trying to get some space between us and the wall so we'll have a chance to shoot the enemy as they come in. I'm not going to actually engage them from the walls since we'll probably lose in the long run, and the couple of units I had doing that to start with, I immediately pulled back after a volley or two. We are going to have some early action with the Cav. Where the enemy were most sparse, I decided to attack, but the enemy did have time to turn around and shoot me before I could, so some hefty losses taken, but the charge still makes its impact and we should be able to deal those losses right back. It'll be more difficult just here because the enemy are in the river, which dramatically slows down the charge and removes your charge bonus. Still, once a normal melee starts, these troops aren't very good, so I think my lancers will be able to deal with them. We can also now call in the first of our naval support volleys against this nice blob of enemies. It was shooting at some of my guys in the walls, which distracts them and makes them stop for a bit, so it's a nice way to try and get more kills with the naval fire. Didn't actually get that many hits by the looks of things. I think the targeting wasn't quite right. I must have targeted just behind where they were. Anyway, my Cav moved on to fight even more enemy units and cleared up the enemy on the northern side of the map, so at least we're focusing on one broad direction here. Now the meat of the battle will begin, where the enemy run in, try to get to our lines, and we'll try to shoot as many of them as we can on the way, and then melees will start and we'll fold around to shoot into the flanks of those melees while the troops who are in the melee just have to try and survive. You know, I've only just realised that we actually can't retreat from here. I thought that was a deliberate move, sir. Oh, I wouldn't think so. I'm not one of the heartless types you hear about. I just wanted the men to focus on looking ahead. Not so appealing when 2 feet ahead is a crazed native. A little wiggle room would be nice. Shall we order the men to fold out and extend their lines, sir? Please do. We've got more flares as well. Anyone got a bright idea for a good explosion? It's a bit close quarters for that, don't you think, sir? Yes, but I was rather planning on having that fat statue over there removed. Might as well do it now. The Japs love being all poetic, don't they? They'll take it as a visual metaphor for the times. Might just be worth a shot, sir. Very funny. Now, how do you light these things anyway? Not in your hand, sir. Don't worry, I'll do it. As the enemy put pressure on us from the south, we folded around from the north and started shooting into the flanks of these crowds of foes and did massive damage. But they're doing a lot of damage back to us because the melees aren't very nice for the troops involved in them. We ate up a couple of units outside the castle using our Cav, and broadly speaking this strategy is now working. We're just taking some extreme damage on the units right at the front. We got their general into melee with our lancers, he routs, and that starts the rout of everything else. As the enemy leave, we're going to be somewhat nice. We're not attacking them with melee attacks as they go, but we are going to shoot some of them, so not going to completely freely let them leave the castle. So they did virtually wipe out the forces guarding the southern side of the Tenchu there. A heroic victory still, but a couple of units are going to be lost because of that uneven pressure on our force. That's a shame, and the rest of the army is damaged but potentially still able to fight again. It'll get a turn of replenishment since we're in our own castle. The Sacho then finally take out our vassal on the eastern side of the island, so things aren't so secure over there anymore. Now, as we hack through the general bad news at the start of the turn, we get information that the Okayama, our new vassal, are planning to attack us. So that's very disloyal. They only just joined us and now they want out. They don't necessarily have the troops to do that, so it's not a huge threat. We've also reached the new level of modernization that will now allow us to research artillery, or usable artillery. So hopefully we'll see some artillery actually being put into our armies soon. Now, as for the Okayama, I'm going to ignore them because even if they do attack us, they only have a few troops, so they're not going to be a huge threat. Instead, I focus on going after the large Owaji army in our territory that had been just raiding things, and we took it down with an auto-resolve. We could just overwhelm them. Then I can send my reserve stack back to the Okayama capital, so our vassal doesn't get any ideas about getting that back, and John Alcock will start moving back north towards Bizen to eventually defend that location as well. There's a decent chance we'll see enemies coming from the east. We can see a full stack over there right now, so we'll just keep an eye out. They shouldn't be able to attack us in one turn, so overall things quite safe. Charles is going to split off from Dorian's army and actually go back to get his own army now, or get his own small group at least, so he can walk separately from Dorian and count as a separate commander, because that is usually more efficient in terms of gaining experience on your officers. Meanwhile, Dorian just pushes some Totori away, but they don't really want to fight, so nothing came of that. Now over here in Kyushu, I've brought up some reserves to support Hook, and I'm going to use them now to attack this small group of Sacho survivors and kill them. I didn't move Hook out because his army is in very bad condition. The British units replenish very slowly without the relevant recruitment buildings being present, so it's actually going to take him ages to get back to full strength. We get here the chance to recruit a new general, and I'm going to take that so we can have someone to help Hook here. And we get this guy, Jervis. He looks absolutely great, but he's another one of these officers that is technically a Japanese guy because he's recruited up from a Japanese captain in the game's logic, so he's kind of half and half. Anyway, I'm going to use him to besiege the nearby Sacho settlement, and then I can move Hook up to act as the support for this fight to give us a nice easy auto-resolve, and the place will be captured.
Who are you now?
I'm your commanding officer, I suppose, anyway. I don't remember assigning you. Where did you get a major's uniform? It's in terrible nick.
It's my uniform. I've been wearing it for 5 years. No wonder it's falling apart. You'll have to get me another one, won't you? You must be this Georgi I've read about.
It's George, you numbskull. And in fact it is Colonel Hook to you, or more precisely, Sir. Your colours are wrong. What regiment are you from, Major?
George? Of course! All this Jap talk has warped my poor little mind.
What is your name?
Jervis.
Jervis. That all?
No, there's more. You see, long ago, I was on a top-secret mission to rescue a prisoner who had been shipwrecked on these treacherous islands. It all went belly up on day one, and I was off to the mountains on my lonesome to hide from these spooky samurai. Now that this is all British soil, I'm bloody back.
But who put you in command of my reserves?
They did! They saw the Major's braid, realized they were all outranked, and fell in behind the strange vagabond trudging the empty road. Oh, how it lifted my spirits! It reminded me what it means to be a soldier. Then we found some Japs, and we had their spines out.
I'm very, very confused, Major. Where are the rest of your men now?
Getting more spines in the castle, sir. Oh, I haven't called anyone sir in such a long time.
Bloody hell. This island. I don't think it's worth all this. The Sacho advance up the east end of the island continues, and they actually come and attack one of our very lightly defended castles. But their own force hasn't recovered from their recent battles against our vassal, so they're in bad condition, and things don't look too difficult for us. We've even got naval support, so we're going to use the same tactic we saw earlier, draw the enemy into a gunfight, then blow half of them up with our naval attack, and that seems pretty effective. our units on the wall probably won't survive long enough to do it a second time, so after the first time we fall back and draw the enemy in to do the same thing we saw earlier as well. Just let the enemy stand in front of us, get as many kills as we can, and take advantage of the fact that the enemy don't form up properly after coming over the wall, since they're coming over in dribs and drabs and end up not really shooting you very much and getting shot quite a lot themselves. We can also use our spear levy to just be a distraction, cause the enemy to go and fight the spear levy, whose loss are irrelevant, and then shoot the enemy while they're in that melee. More naval support fire can come in, and all we can really do is danger close attacks just on the edge of the castle to see if we can get any kills, and it seemed to be somewhat effective. Now everything just continued as it was going there until we eventually won. Didn't really need to give many orders. Our spear levy, or one of the spear levy units, were completely annihilated down to the very last man dying to friendly fire. On the other side things weren't quite so heavy, but things will eventually go in our favour there just because we have the numbers now. There's the result, losing one unit, but it was a garrison unit, so you get it back, and the enemy got taken down. So that's their offensive, crushed. Now the Tottori come and make a very sneaky move. They move past Dorian and just go for the castle he was previously at. That's annoying, and this is another case where it might be possible to win by just camping around the Tenchu, but I didn't want to, because I'd already done it a few times during this playing session. I was just like, no more of this. Let's just take the loss. It will be faster in real world time to lose the castle and just walk over and auto-resolve it to take it back. Well, that was the plan, at least. Now the Okayama take their turn, and indeed they do betray us, as the rumour suggested, so that's pretty inconvenient, although at least they're not very strong, so their plan to take me by surprise by rebelling in a situation where they couldn't win with their rebellion isn't going to work out ultimately. I am going to let them take this settlement again because I can't be bothered to try and stop them, but now we're going to have 2 stacks against their roughly half a stack in the area, and we'll probably crush this quite quickly. As for Dorian, things weren't so easy. I came back to lay siege to the castle, but there was a substantial garrison, and now it's not just an easy auto-resolve to get it back, so I left it under siege thinking we'll soon be able to move more troops up to support. As for the Okayama, we'll just get loads of stuff together in the area and go after their army here with John Alcock. With 2 stacks, they don't stand a chance and they get out of the way. That clears our route to take back our territory, and obviously that's not an issue. That balance spot had almost nothing on it for them. There we go. Once that place was captured, I moved out again to go after the army just because we could and we had enough movement points, and again it was an easy auto-resolve, so there we go. The Okayama have been quite thoroughly punished for their rebellion, and they ultimately didn't achieve anything. Hopefully that will be a nice lesson to our other vassals and other clans in general that we can't really be resisted at this stage. Now, Charles Alcock would probably be expected to go and help Dorian in this situation, but instead I'm going to send him over here to the docks to sail out. He's got a few regular units and tons of conscripts that he's gathered up, making a full army that he can now take behind enemy lines to make some kind of surprise attack. I wanted to land at this port, but the rules for how you do this are a bit strange in Fall of the Samurai, because ports have a zone of control around them that stops you from landing next to them until the port has been destroyed. So I used my guns to blow up the port, but that counts as using your turn, so now I can't land at it, and the enemy will just repair the port during their turn. So we'll have to come up with something a tiny bit more clever to get around that next time. Now back in Kyushu, Tananao has moved up to take up position on the eastern side of the island, so no more sneaky attacks from the Sacho, and indeed, it looked like I could go on the offensive myself and take advantage of the fact that the enemy had recently been defeated. They've got nothing here defending their front line now, so we can attack the territory previously held by our vassal and just pick up an auto-resolve for a win there, killing that extra unit off to the side as well. Good work, Tananao. This will now be our new front line. I won't bother making the vassal again since they've already failed us. And we can even just keep moving on with Tananao in the future because there are no more Sacho armies in front of us since they're so concentrated in the western part of the island. So that will come in useful later. As for the western part, I'm only going to advance for now with our new general Tadakuni Jervis, because his army's in good condition, even though it's not a very good army, and Hook's army really needs quite a few turns of replenishment to be ready to fight properly, at least. And there's not an enormous rush here. I don't think the Sacho can pull anything on us, so we'll wait around with him and see what happens. Now in the next turn I'm moving out with Joss at Nagasaki. We've got some ships for him as well, and I could move him to support Jervis and make that attack easy, but I thought it might be more productive to actually go right for the Sacho Corps, attack Satsuma, their presumably home province where their capital will be. We'll have to clear aside some enemy fleets on the way and stop them raiding our trade, but they are not going to challenge us at this point. Our fleets are full of high level ships, even if they're quite small. Now back with Charles, I detach a ship from his fleet to blow up the port separately, meaning the stack with the transports still has an action this turn and can now land next to it. So there we go, that costs their turn, so it's going to be another turn before they can do anything, but this force behind enemy lines should be quite disruptive. It's also extremely dangerous, of course, but perhaps that's why Charles is going for it after all. Now finally, I punished the Okayama completely by going after their one last settlement and taking them down. I could have re-vassalized them. I don't know if they would have thought to betray us again, but we're not going to risk it. We'll just kill them all and capture their territory, doing this the easy way. Now John can go back south to restabilize the front line and think about further advances. That is it. Thank you very much for watching this episode, and special thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making everything happen. We'll see how Joss and Charles' behind enemy lines antics get on in the next episode of Honourable Gentlemen.